The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds.
Well, welcome to Sarah's Country, to our old friends of the show and, of course, the growing number of new friends joining the passionate community that is swirling around the coolest new show in town. Broadcast live Monday through Thursday from 7 o'clock every night, and then, of course, available on demand in your ears on podcast in the morning. We're glad to be back from a week's holiday, stepping away from this microphone for a very important occasion. It was my father's 60th in Cromwell. Oh, can we say Cromwell? He was a bad man, apparently, Oliver Cromwell. But no statue to pull down from this ludicrousy that was happening before we left. Next, they're going to pull down the big fruit. You know what, from driving obesity, from fructose. Look, we're back now and we're gaining huge momentum as we move now into the next phase of Sarah's Country post-COVID. Amidst this ludicrousy, as we have a big year ahead of us. And it was important to recoup our energies because, you know, we're not going to leave you anytime soon like that. But of course, it was a very important week. And as we are going to involve you more throughout this week, about the evolution of this interactive evening show that is here to stay. This is all about the things that matter most to farming food and fibre at the bottom of the world. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to join us. After lockdown, it was great to see people reconnecting with each other, especially this weekend, whether it was in the Maui as we lead into the close of duck shooting, or at great events like there was these drought shouts organised last week in Hawke's Bay. Well done to all those that pulled that together. Maybe it's being able to have milestone birthdays and events, you know, seeing newborns and farewelling loved ones. We both took the week off. This is me and Joel, and we headed south of Christchurch on our own little missions. Joel, my producer, and I. Joel, I'd love you to share. You've got your fangirls there that follow Sarah's Country. They would like to know more about what you got up to than I did. What was your highlights exploring the South Island?
A surprise would probably have been the glowworms. I've never seen a glowworm before, and I really didn't expect it much from it, but they were just incredible to watch at night. So that was pretty cool.
Where was that? On the west coast?
Yeah, that was just outside Franz Josef, just in the woods at night. Didn't go to a cave or anything, just went for a dander in the woods and found them all under a tree, which was pretty cool.
Fantastic. What about snow in Central Otago? You've seen a bit of snow, would you, in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, a wee bit. There was the frost in the mountains, and some of the mountain caps were pretty heavy. I mean, we'd maybe get, I don't know, about quarter of that back home. So, yeah, it was pretty cool seeing all the snow.
Now, I was showing a good friend of mine from the North Island around my part of the world, which, of course, for those of you who don't know, I grew up in Cromwell in Central Otago, and I don't believe there's anything better than winter with, snow blanketing the hills, curling on the ice. Pinot Noir port, if you haven't tried it, you should check it out, paired with a bit of good haggis. It truly is my own paradise, for my family, and it's so special to show others around. For me, my highlights were being able to have, I'd love to have a wee special mention, cocktails at Hector Black's in Timaru, the coolest new bar if you haven't been there, and wine tasting at the very newest cellar door in Central Otago, Takano, just opened up literally weeks before COVID. Check it out. We stayed above the Warri line at the Bendigo Cabins, complete with outdoor bath high in the hills, and of course the country glamour of Lake Hawea Station. To squeeze it in, of course, some duck shooting in Hawke's Bay and Chardonnay at Blackbarn. I've always wanted to go there. Look, we don't need to go to hot sandy beaches near the equator. We have it all right here, so make sure you back your backyard this winter. Go somewhere you've always wanted. Where are you going in New Zealand on holiday this winter? I'd love to know in the comments below. What is your winter plans? I'm sure you had a break that you can't go overseas. And of course, here on Sarah's Country, this is interactive. We take your questions to our guests where we can. And of course, any suggestions that you have for the show, add them to the comments below, wherever you're watching across 15 different platforms. That's right. So wherever you're watching, thank you for joining us. And of course, on demand, you can email me, sarah@periamedia.com. So what is coming up tonight on Sarah's Country? Joel has been surprised at the amount of things we milk in this country. We have an obsession with milk, he said, from cows to sheep, from oats to goats, even deer milk. But after 7:20, we're going to head to the western shores of Lake Taupo. It's home base of the Southern Cross breed. This is a hybrid incorporating the world's 3 leading dairy sheep breeds. And we learn about the expansion of the Waikato sheep milking sector, which has jumped considerably with many converted farms ready for production this spring. Then we're going to head to Parliament to catch up with the Minister for Regional Development, Mr Shane Jones. We're going to discuss water storage infrastructure and trees after 7:30. Is New Zealand First showing renewed interest in mega water infrastructure and working with both parties? All that after 7:30, of course, as well. The rise of regional unrest and his support for forestry. And what economic impact is that having on our local communities? To close the show, we are celebrating the success of 2 bright young men from St Bede's College here in Christchurch who have taken out the title on Friday as the winner of the 2020 FMG Junior Young Farmer of the Year. Joining us live after 7:40 is Jack Cockley and Mac Williams. But to kick off the show, we're going to find out if Britain's mad scramble for trade deals before its departure from the European Union later this year could play into the hands of New Zealand negotiators as they embark on talks for a fairer crack at its market for agricultural exports. All that with former trade negotiator Charles Finny. And that is all after the latest on-farm story from Global HQ from Liz and George Geeson from Waituna West in the Manawatu, who are just getting on and doing it. This is Sarah's Country.
I do worry with the way the world's evolving that it's very hard to get staff over the whole industry.
Who wants to smoke this?
Me, please.
But kids are great, they're just like sponges, they just want to learn.
Oh, yay! What have we got?
Love it. Look at all of that.
So get them inspired and passionate young and hopefully they'll just want to carry on.
High five. Woohoo!
We're Liz and George and we farm here with our 5 children at Waituna West. George and I farm here up the Pākehā Kura, farming sheep and beef, and I've got 150 hives. Farm's 365 hectares, it's a family farm. We came up here 10 years ago and we leased for 7 and we're now in our 3rd year of ownership. We work really well as a team, George and I. He's not so keen on the bees, but I love the farming so I get to help him as well. When we first came up here, we didn't have a lot of money. We had a young family and I was at home and I didn't want to go back to work. I would have had to find childcare and transport and it just didn't add up. So I helped on the farm, and when I wasn't helping on the farm, I built a bit of an orchard, had my garden going, and I'd make my own bread. We eat all our own meat and I'll never stop milking my cow.
And that's done.
When we first came up here, there was no bees, and so I rang up the local beekeeper and asked them if they'd come and put bees on our property, and they said no, they were too busy. I thought, well, stuffy, I'll do it myself. And I went and did a weekend course on how to be a beekeeper. I got 1 hive, and then that went to the next year 8. And then it occurred to me that actually there wasn't a lot of clover out the back of the farm, and there was a lot of clover growing in my garden from the bees' 8 hives that I had in my garden. I just said to George, look, let's put them out there. So it's just evolved from that, really. We've got 5 kids. I was learning and I thought it was a good way while I was learning to teach the kids. So I offered it to the school and said, look, I'd love to put some hives down here and get the kids involved. It would be a good way to raise money. And so we've got 4 hives at Waituna West Primary School, and they're producing about anywhere between 80 and 120 kilos of honey a year.
Oh yeah, there she is. She's got blue dot.
Oh yeah. Look at that honey. Yeah.
I'm in a position where I can give time. I've got lots of energy and I want to share my energy with the next generation and that to come.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Liz. Wait, do I have anything on my back? No. Do I have anything? Do I have anything? No, your back's clear.
Follow Nelly.
I love farming, I love being outside, I love that the harder you work, the more you can produce. And it's in that cycle of life. It starts into the soil and how you treat that, and you grow good pasture, and then you have bees to pollinate it, and then you have your stock that eat it and they grow out, and you know, you're fine tuning the whole time, and it's just so rewarding.
There was a great on-farm story there from Global HQ, and you can, of course, read more about Liz and George's experience there in Waitona West, a fantastic part of the Manawatu. Thank you so much for all of your comments that are coming through, welcoming us back, Joel. So they did miss us, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, I have... Sorry, Joel, it's just frozen on me.
You lost your place.
I did. Joel, would you be able to throw up that fantastic story from Lincoln University, and we'll be back just in 2 seconds.
Yeah, okay.
This is Sarah's Country.
So here at Lincoln University, we teach various courses in food science, but also wine science and agriculture. And personally, I teach the course called the Principles of Malting and Brewing, also known as the beer class, and food innovation. So a class that teaches students how to develop new food products, going all the way from product concept to the formulation and the commercialization. This is the only paper in New Zealand that goes through a whole semester and teaches brewing. So this will give a huge opportunity to students to jump in this growing sector and being some of the few in the country that have the knowledge to actually work and be successful.
I really rate the quality of degrees out of Lincoln for lots of good reasons. My one was very broad for a start, so it gave me a great broadness where I could go on and build from that. I think there is a lot of demand for science graduates from Lincoln in New Zealand. A lot of that is of course our agricultural background and our primary industries. A lot of it's from that, but not all from that. We have environment, for example, which is a really big issue in New Zealand at the moment. And we have great food industries. You know, we have food that is really demanded all around the world, including beer and wine and that. And you know, that's the really thing where those science graduates with the knowledge of those kind of industries are fantastic. What I really liked about it is you felt like you were going somewhere that was a little bit like a family, and I know that sounds a bit corny, but I always feel that Lincoln has always had that feel about it. It's a nice, compact campus. You're not all over town. You see the same people every day, and you really feel that that's part of your whānau out there in a way.
Students have plenty of opportunities to do practical work, whether it's group projects in the lab, but also individual projects. And these could be done at the university, but also in private companies.
Yeah, we've hired graduates here out of Lincoln, particularly over the summertime as summer students, and they're great because they always come with that practical aspect, which we really love. And I think employers love that because you can give a task and they can find a way to do it. And that makes them great graduates.
Thank you so much for your patience there. Sorry, we're having a few technical difficulties that have just popped up, but of course, we've been away for a week or so, so we're just trying to work through those. Now, I apologise about that. We're just playing that short video there, bringing a wee bit further earlier in Sarah's Country. For those of you who are taking the time to join us for the very first time, you may not be aware that Sarah's Country is broadcast from the campus of Lincoln University. And if you are watching just there, Lincoln have announced free postgraduate programs for all of those, that may have been at Lincoln prior and, of course, wanting to return and upskill, especially in this post-COVID environment where we have quite the shortage of people coming into our industry, to elevate those that have been coming through the sector is really, really important. Now, thank you so much for the comments coming through. Yeah, as I was saying earlier, it's really nice to notice that we did take a week off. This is myself and Joel, and we have a lot coming up in tonight's show as well as throughout the week. If you're new to the show, Sarah's Country is produced in alliance with the wonderful people at Farmers Weekly. And I don't say that lightly. They have an enormous team of agricultural journalists and analysts that help produce the show with me. And of course, they produce those stories that come in your mailbox if you're in rural delivery here in New Zealand every Monday or Tuesday if it lands, with those full in-depth journalism around the matters that matter most when farming, food and fibre here in New Zealand. Now, of course, you know the drill if you've been here before. This is an interactive show and we would like your comments and questions to our guests, so make sure you get them in the comments below. Joel, have we got our next guest lined up?
Just give me 2 wee ticks there.
Alrighty, as we were saying, we were travelling around New Zealand, myself and Joel, and had a wonderful winter break. I'd love to know in the comments, where is your favourite New Zealand place that you like to head away in winter? I mean, we have a lot of great summer places, beachfront, cribs or batches. What is it? Wherever you are, it's like docking and tailing, and of course winter sometimes doesn't seem that nice, but we have some very wonderful places. I'm a snowboarder, so I really love getting up into the mountains, and since I've moved to Canterbury, there's a lot of club fields that I haven't been to. So where do you like? I'd love to hear some comments from you below to see that you are watching around the country. Joel is just currently getting our next guest on the line, and then we have a wonderful array. As I said, Minister Shane Jones will be joining us and we'll be talking trees. We had the winner from the FMG 2020 Junior Young Farmer of the Year up towards the end of the show, and we're going to be speaking sheep milk with Peter Gatley from Maui Milk in Taupo. Now, New Zealand and Australia are the latest countries to start talks for a trade deal with the UK, following Japan and the United States earlier this year. And ongoing negotiations continue for us with the EU. But how do we balance those tariff reductions in order to promote an FTA, a free trade agreement with New Zealand, with the potential negative impacts on the UK's meat and dairy sectors at threat? Or so they think. Joining us now to discuss this is former trade negotiator Charles Finny. Charles, good evening.
Good evening, Sarah.
We have you there, I think, broadcasting in from Wellington.
Indeed.
Fantastic. Now, how dicey are these negotiations for New Zealand when there is such a strong buy local in the UK?
I don't think this is dicey at all. Obviously, probably the most sensitive issue that's going to be on the agenda will be some bits of agriculture, but the UK is negotiating with us, and we're one of the first countries to be negotiating with them. So they must want this deal, and they know they have to do a deal with us on agriculture. So I'm reasonably positive about our prospects. Obviously, negotiations haven't started yet, so we don't quite know what they'll be expecting, but we wouldn't be where we are right now if things were as dicey as you are suggesting.
Okay, but what about sliding into that December 31 date that Boris Johnson has put on exiting Brexit, regardless of trade negotiations, trade deals?
Well, that is one of a number of complications. So he's got his Brexit negotiation with the EU. He's negotiating with the US right now. He's negotiating with Australia and also with Japan. So there are lots of negotiations going on. In fact, they started with Turkey a couple of days ago too. So lots of negotiations going on. But they seem to be wanting to do a deal with us in Australia. They know that agriculture is a key interest to us both. And they know that dairy and meat are an absolutely essential for New Zealand if we're going to do the deal. So I'm very hopeful that we'll be in a better position sometime in the next couple of years than we are right now in terms of access to that market.
It's quite a large market too. It's one of the largest importers of dairy products in the world, and the Dairy Companies Association has stated 0.08% we currently import of our dairy products into the UK.
Yeah, well, look, it was our biggest market, wasn't it, for most of our history? It's really only been in the last 50 years or so that it hasn't been. So there's huge potential for growth. The reason it hasn't been enormous for us in recent times has been it's part of the EU, and the EU has got really excessive protections there on those products that we're best at producing. But if the UK is prepared to have a different approach than the EU has had, huge prospects for us. And I hope they do go that way, because I do think the UK has got good opportunities to export its agricultural products to the world. So adopting more of a New Zealand-Australia approach than the EU approach.
Yeah, and those EU negotiations, are they really, has it got to a point of just stalling now?
No, I think both sides are trying their very best. I don't think the Europeans fully appreciate that the UK government could actually go for a hard Brexit. I think they've always assumed that they won't want to go there, and that there will be some form of deal negotiated at last minute. But it looks as though that Downing Street is prepared to play hardball in those negotiations. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting negotiation to watch over the next 6 months.
Okay, and you're suggesting that the UK's new interest in joining the CPTPP, we shouldn't play hardball with that to get our own way?
Look, I think that the bilateral deal between New Zealand and the UK is going to deliver the best result. The fact that the UK wants to be part of the CPTPP is fantastic news. It's a G7 economy, a G20 economy. Adding another major economy onto the list of participants just adds to the credibility of the CPTPP, and it will be encouraging others to join. But I disagree with those who are suggesting it gives us more leverage. I think it's just fantastic that they want to be part of that agreement, and I look forward to us working with the UK and all the other members to negotiate with the rest of the world and get the rest of the world to buy into the disciplines that we have as part of the agreement.
Charles, I just want to take the opportunity to jump across to China and the rhetoric that we're so reliant on China. Is there any further developments in China's interest with the CPTPP?
Well, I think that we're probably even more reliant on China than last time we spoke. The China market is still humming along nicely, and a number of other markets are slowing. But it's interesting that China has started to talk positively about CPTPP. I think it's probably a more complex negotiation than UK during CPTPP. The big problem for China is that Canada and Mexico have agreed a free trade agreement with the United States that has a clause in it which gives the United States essentially a right of veto over any negotiations with other parties. I can't see the US vetoing UK joining CPTPP, but I can imagine Canada and Mexico are going to have a tough time with the United States on China in the short term. Let's see what happens in November with the US presidential election. But in the short term, I think it would be very difficult for China to join.
And Charles, before we go, we have Minister Shane Jones up on Sarah's Country next. And I'd like to know, National Party has come out saying that they're very strongly blocking their obligations under the WTO when it comes to pushing for local purchasing of our wood as opposed to exporting that surplus. What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, look, Shane's a good mate of mine, and we agree on most things. But his forestry bill is one of those things that we do not agree on. It's not a particularly good piece of legislation. It's actually fine to register log traders, but and to improve standards within the industry, but to sort of have government departments or ministers deciding what the prices are or what volumes are is bad. They've improved the bill as it stands, and so it's no longer going to affect prices. but there's still too much ministerial discretion there. So I hope it doesn't pass before the election. He'll disagree with me strongly.
Thank you so much for taking the time. It's always a pleasure to have you on Serious Country. Former trade negotiator Charles Finny. Now, I would love to know, are you worried about the rise of buy local in our global markets? You know, are you supporting more New Zealand-made products here since COVID? You know, let us know in the comments below, wherever you're watching this live. You know, I certainly am. I'm worried about the blowback in our global markets towards New Zealand products. But, you know, can we have our cake and eat it too? I'd love to know your thoughts. I'm getting some great comments coming through. Katrina McMillan has suggested we go to Mount Lyford in Hamner. It is certainly somewhere I'd love to go. There's some beautiful log cabin accommodation there. And Tony would like me to put, I'll see if I can, I'll put this question to Minister Jones about his fixation with pine trees. And what about native planting? There is a great article in Farmers Weekly out today, about the rise in native nurseries. Check it out in your latest Farmers Weekly. Now, next up on Serious Country, we're going to learn more about the rise of dairy conversions that are supplying French dairy giant Danone with its product, which is sold at a higher premium than goat or cow infant formula. All that coming up next in Serious Country. This is Serious Country.
Delicious. Ever wondered where it starts? Does it start with care? Respect. Fresh grass 365 days a year. The truth is, delicious doesn't start in a single moment or with a single ingredient. Delicious starts here.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce high quality food. Yet, every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
Oh, it's so great to see our regulars back dropping into the comments, and thank you so much for welcoming us back. All your suggestions about great places to go in New Zealand, of course, Treble Cone and Codrona, great places to go skiing, especially this school holidays, July school holidays. It will be fantastic, no queues, as well as Jock said, a bit of a tahr hunt. How has the hunting season been for you? Whether it's out in the hills or, of course, duck shooting season. Now, I've also got quite a few comments coming in here for Shane Jones. I'll do my absolute best to put some of those to him as well. Maui Milk has 4 new farms this season, bringing its total operation to 6, including its existing farms, while Spring Sheep Milking has another 3 new farms, lifting the total to 7 and the total sheep milk to over 1,000. Joining us now on the phone is Maui Milk General Manager Peter Gatley. Good evening, Peter. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Sarah.
You're just a little bit muffled there, Peter. I'll just see if we can get you.
Move a little bit. normally the phone line here is not too bad.
Yeah, okay. We'll see how we go. Firstly, Peter, what is driving the conversion from cow to sheep? Is this market volatility, or is it the sort of looming environmental rules that are coming down on dairy farmers here in New Zealand?
Well, there's a whole raft of things there. First of all, we've got to understand everything starts with the consumer, and the consumer demand is far beyond what we can currently produce. So our milk is primarily going to Danone and is being sold under the market-leading Kerry Care brand. They've launched a whole new category of grass-based sheep milk from New Zealand, and it's an ultra-premium product. So with the demand exceeding supply, that's the first thing that farmers will be conscious of. But farmers are interested in improving their EFS, the economic farm surplus per hectare, and it certainly offers that prospect. They're looking for stability and payout. They're mindful that the environmental regulations are changing under their feet, and certainly in the Waikato there's a lot of awareness of that. They're looking for opportunities to add value, small farms that might be marginal in terms of scale. For cow dairy, 50, 60, 70 hectares sort of thing can work well with sheep dairy. We've got farmers that are interested in succession planning. They've got families that are interested in farming but maybe looking to do something a little bit different and take on a new challenge to what the parents and grandparents have done. There's a whole lot of things. Even well-established farmers are excited by the prospect of reinvigorating their farming career by taking on something new like this. New set of challenges, but still using the skills that they have and turning grass into milk. And I think that's another key point. There's a lot of awareness of how successful some of the dairy goat people have been in recent years. But there's a lot of farmers who love that concept, or the concept of improving profitability and income stability while meeting the environmental regulations, but at the same time they prefer not to have so much money tied up in barns and machinery, and they actually like a grazing system. It's what they're good at. So there's a whole raft of things.
Peter, I actually visited a few sheep milking farms in Western Australia, believe it or not, and they were very envious of how fast New Zealand just gets on with a movement and runs with it, especially with infrastructure, not only on farm but from an industry level. From when you showed interest initially in sheep milking through to now, how far has the industry and the sector of sheep milking come?
Well, look, we've been involved for 5 years now, and it's effectively, when you're in it day to day, you think you've got plenty to deal with, but you stand back and look at it. It's a rocket ship. I think the big breakthrough came when we were able to import world-class genetics from France in particular. That happened in 2017, and so we're already milking those animals and moving on from doing AI with that imported semen progeny tested sires. That represented a massive step forward. We're moving on from that to embryo transfer, where we can combine that with our exceptional females to produce some truly outstanding animals that are particularly well suited, proven to fit with the New Zealand pasture-based seasonal farm system.
And of course, the new spray dryer being built in the Waikato Innovation Park.
Well, yeah. Well, that's a big factor. I mean, the first one that went up, a lot of people wondered whether that was going to be a white elephant, and it's only a matter of a few years before it's oversubscribed, and the new one that's being built is more than twice the size. So it's going to be two side by side, and we're doing everything we can to fill them up. And so the constraint on expansion at the moment is the number of dairy ewes that we can breed. So, in fact, we've got a board meeting this week, and it's a major focus of the discussion is how to speed up the multiplication of high quality dairy ewes using the genetics we now have available. We're familiar with the reproductive technologies, AI, ET, sex semen. All of these things potentially have a role to play, and we're really interested in getting some growth in new numbers, because that is the constraint.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, lastly, Peter, it's not going to be a centralised North Island thing. I know there's a lot of interest in places like Canterbury, but what sort of infrastructure is needed in those regions, especially for collection and processing, to allow for other regions to get on the sheep milking bandwagon?
Well, that's a really interesting point, given that you've just been talking to Shane Jones. He's just grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and said, look, if he wants to put some money into something which, I think has got some real value to add, a dryer like we have in the Waikato, one of those in Canterbury, would be a rocket ship. We've got a lot of interest in people down there. We've already supplied genetics down there to people who are really keen to get going. We know it's top sheep country. It's sort of like the Waikato, but without facial eczema. Look, it's got a lot to offer, and there's a big growth opportunity there. We just need a dryer.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us as General Manager for Maui Milk there on the western shores of Lake Taupo, exploding across the Waikato with many sheep conversions. And as you heard there from Peter, a lot of interest in Canterbury. So our regional economic development and our spend from our provincial growth fund is more than just trees. Of course, up next, we're going to hear from that Minister, Shane Jones, on the Forests Amendment Bill that the industry and opposition are criticising as rushed and unreasonable. What are your thoughts on tonight's story? Did you see it on News Hub at 6 about the fears among the East Coast community about the blanketing of forestry on very productive, fertile food and fibre land? Was the story a true representation of the feeling on the coast? I would like to know your comments if you saw that program in the comments below. Now we're going to be joined by Minister Shane Jones up next on Sarah's Country. This is Sarah's Country.
Balance has its own team of innovation specialists. It's our job to lead the way, working with some of the most cutting-edge science and research. We've got partnerships with some of the best suppliers in the world, so our farmers get the very best products for New Zealand farms.
And in every region across the country, the conditions are very different, and farmers' and growers' needs are too.
That's why we're always looking for solutions that are just right, like here at our Huntly Service Centre.
And here in Canterbury, we've got a self-service silo, so I can pick up fat when it suits me.
And here in Morrinsville, we've got a world-class mill. That means that we can safely deliver our customers with the freshest, highest quality feed and minerals.
It's about putting the customer first because that's what drives our business.
We've been focusing on faster turnaround of orders. We've got to get the right products to the right places at the right times.
Here in Taranaki, we've got New Zealand's only urea manufacturing plant. It's where we create our premium sustained fertiliser.
We're supplying nationwide and working locally. By getting to know you and what you want to achieve, we can help you get there.
And with the new My Balance platform, Balance has put my farm at my fingertips.
In fact, we offer support in all sorts of ways, sharing the best nutrition practice with farming families across the country. Whether we're talking about animal health, farm productivity,
or looking after our natural environment, sustainability underpins everything we do. We use our local expertise and the latest tools to help farmers and growers navigate the changing regulations, so you can leave your farm in great shape for the future.
And we can be really accurate, avoiding areas like wetlands and waterways with our award-winning Spread Smart tech. It makes the job far safer, more efficient, and gives you the best results.
When you've got access to that kind of know-how, you've got the support you need to make sure you're farming sustainably. It's that kind of thinking that'll keep us going for generations to come.
Together creating the best soil and feed on earth.
With climate change bringing more severity and frequency of droughts, having a reliable water supply from water storage infrastructure is, of course, increasingly important to provide that resilience and support for communities, in particular, of course, isolated regions such as Northland. This is one of a few topics I want to discuss tonight with Minister for Regional Economic Development, Shane Jones, who joins us now. Kia ora, Shane.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Greetings, folks.
Now, let's start with the announcement last Friday. You were up there, this water storage facility that's going to hold up to 350,000 cubic metres of water and enable the iwi to transition about 300 hectares of land currently used for dairy into what you hope high-value horticulture. What will guarantee that this extra water storage is going to reflect your desires for a land use change in Northland?
Well, the first thing I'd tell the participants, the viewers and people listening to you and I talking, historically this land was an old peat fire. And underneath the land, it's not only a sandy, slightly loamy country, but there's a lot of peat. And a great deal of effort went in the days of the Lands and Survey, and to a similar extent, Land Corp, to create the farms that are currently owned by the tribe Te Rarawa near Kaitaia. They've decided that the jobs and the returns that they need cannot be delivered through dairy. They're of the view that dairy is going to face ongoing regulation. It's going to face ongoing challenges in relation to people's expectations about animal welfare, reliance on migrant labour. So for those reasons, I'm advised, they decided that they should future-proof their options to change direction and create avocado and other types of cropping on the land. Now, I'm absolutely supportive because this is a loan. This is not a grant. And this is a well-organised iwi. They already own one of New Zealand's or Northland's largest market-growing operations, and the land is well and truly capable of growing avocado, but nothing can happen unless they get the water right. So because the soil, largely sand, is really porous, they have to line this new lake with some type of synthetic plastic bottom, and in that way they won't lose the water in terms of the height of summer.
We spoke quite a few, like a month ago, to Kaipara Harbour Mayor Dr. Jason Smith with regards to some of these larger water storage projects whereby it's obviously urban and rural benefit, and of course some environmental benefits that we've seen with places such as in Nelson with salutation, which of course will be a bigger issue for some of those Northland communities as well.
Yeah, so one of the difficulties that faces the farmers around Dargaville in the Kaipara Harbour is seawater intrusion into their farming country. And we've got the Northland Water Trust, chaired by Murray McCulley, working with those farmers and looking with engineers at innovative solutions. So in that particular part of the north, Sarah, there's about $50 or $60 million worth of production in a relatively small area. But because it's low-lying and the power of the Kaipara Harbour, we need to ensure we can keep them on the land. We have other projects in the Kaipara, which the $70 million, which was allocated to the trust headed by Murray McCulley. His fellow trustee is a chap called Dover Samuels, who was a politician in the Helen Clark government, and they're looking at a variety of sites. Now, sadly, all of these sites will need resource consent because damming either water or building dams is a regulated activity. And for those reasons, I was particularly happy to see David Parker's legislation include the first water storage facility in the north at Kaikohe. And it's a 750,000 cubic metre water storage facility, which will give better options for local landowners, but it represents a backup as well for the Kaikohe township, which, as you know, pretty much ran out of water during the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. The Northland district is certainly hasn't had a lot of attention as opposed to the drought-affected areas of Hawke's Bay and Waikato. As Regional Development Minister, Shane, have you changed your tune and appetite for some of these larger water storage facilities that were on the table when your coalition government came into power to be able to ensure this climate change increased pressure on our farming systems can continue?
Well, I had to be loyal and behave myself within the envelope that was constructed, Sarah, when we formed the government. And the mega schemes were not approved by my Labour colleagues or my Green colleagues. There was scope, however, left for more modest water storage. If you're asking me, when will we see the big brothers come back onto the economic field of play? that all depends on who gets re-elected on September the 19th into the 20th. So with a suitable electoral favour, I will gladly return and I will gladly advocate for the very topic you and I are discussing.
Oh, that's great. Sounds like New Zealand First has certainly come into becoming a bit of a swing option there. Shane, thank you. And with regards to moving on to talking trees, this Forest Amendment Bill has certainly caused a lot of controversy, especially on News Hub tonight, around the effect on your regional towns such as Gisborne, that you're there driving economic gain. But Shane, what I want to understand is this bill is being deemed as interfering in existing commercial arrangements and forcing an oversupply of logs into a domestic market that's not ready for it. But you're saying, no, you had to interfere.
Yeah, so we're under pressure as a government to require the expansion of forestry to get a resource consent. I'm under enormous pressure from the farmers, from the mayors, from the local government councillors and from rural stakeholders who want us to halt the spread of forestry. I have appealed to the forestry owners to come out and demonstrate that they represent a value add to rural New Zealand, because at the moment all rural New Zealand sees from the Federated Farmers' perspective is the march of forestry and the death of jobs. So I have pleaded with the proxies for the foreign owners who own the majority of our plantation forestry, please justify and defend your social license, that as more trees go in the ground, we can defend employment outcomes. To date, they haven't done that, and they've decided to pick a fight with me over a very modest bill which sets up an occupational licensing regime. Now, I thoroughly understand that the combatants from the forestry sector have to defend the rights of their foreign owners and the rights of those who have invested in the forestry sector, but all industries have to contribute to the employment outcomes in the post-COVID world. And really that lies at the heart of the debate which has been swirling around over the last month. But any suggestion that it undermines established practices of the commercial world, look, that's just a puff of wind from my combatants on the side of the National Party.
Yeah, Shane, there's a minority report out from the National Party suggesting that there is no evidence to show that there is an issue with supply. And you speak there about social licence, but forestry is operating under a different jurisdiction than sheep and beef, especially when it comes to environmental management.
Yeah, I've defended the right of forestry to continue and enjoy exclusive privileges in terms of inward investment, foreign direct investment. And I'll continue to defend it because so many of the owners are of foreign extraction. But they need to play the game. They need to look after Kiwis and contribute to the development of jobs. And what we're doing with the bill that you're referring to, which is going to be debated, I suspect, this week, if not very soon, is to ensure that the logmongers, the forestry advisors are registered, act in a transparent manner, conduct their business with integrity and contribute to a predictable and consistent supply of timber to the New Zealand industry. In no way whatsoever does it inhibit international trade. Although I must say majority of the logs are going to China, and there have been two mini crises, quite frankly, for the forestry sector as China has turned off the tap. So it's important that we broaden and deepen the market here in New Zealand, but you cannot do that unless you have access to raw materials.
So you're suggesting that this doesn't go against our obligations under the World Trade Organization?
Yes, no, I saw that, and I'm a bit saddened that some of the forestry owners operating on behalf of the foreign investors have joined in an holy alliance with my combatants from the National Party, but I expected this to happen. So I largely regard complaints like that as rhetorical spittle.
Shane, what do you say lastly to the people of the East Coast and their concerns of the effect it's having on their regional communities and the fear that they face?
Well, I have a great deal of sympathy for their anxiety, and I suspect during the election, Sarah, we're going to see policies come forward that will require any further farm conversions to require a resource consent. And you won't be able to effect full farm conversions into forestry unless local district council permits it. That will be expensive. That will be time consuming. But I think in that way, local communities can give a view as to what percentage of split between ongoing pastoral farming and new forestry should be struck. And I say to the forestry sector who are concerned about this, unless we can prove that ongoing forestry is going to develop, maintain or sustain jobs, I suspect that their industry is going to become a heck of a lot more regulated than has been the case.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time this evening. That is Minister for Regional Economic Development, Shane Jones. Now, coming up to close the show on Sarah's Country, we're going to be joined by the duo from St Bede's College who took out the 2020 FMG Junior Young Farmer of the Year. This is Sarah's Country. This is Sarah's Country. Joel. Oh, look, we've just got holiday blues. It's okay, we'll be back. I'm loving seeing some new names coming through here. Watching the show, Michael Ross has said, good interviews with Shane. He exposed himself as expected. Now, I'm loving seeing, as I was just saying, new people watching the show. Welcome to you, Bill Campbell, who's telling us he's watching for the first time. Peter Butler, also said, did Shane Jones just say his preference for a national government after the election? I think we can read between the lines on that one. And did also Shane Jones announce his preference for forestry as well in terms of a new election campaign? Lots to read into that interview. Now, they came from 5th place on Friday afternoon to battle it out against 13 teams. We are joined now by our official 2020 FMG Junior Young Farmer of the Year winners, Jack Coakley and Mac Williams. Good evening, gentlemen. Now, I believe you're both at St Bede's. One's a boarder and one's a day boy. I'd love to go to you first. Mac, tell us whereabouts you're from on the West Coast.
So I'm from Jackson's, just 45 minutes out of Greymouth, around there.
And you've been boarding at St Bede's, for the last 5 years, and your last year at school?
Yep, 5 years here now, and last year here, then hopefully on to future things next year, so yeah.
Awesome. And paired up there with Jack. Jack, you're based closer to Christchurch. What was your upbringing in the countryside?
So I was brought up on a rural poultry farm out in West Melbourne, just about 30 minutes out of Christchurch.
And both at St Bede's there. Jack, does St Bede's have a strong agricultural education and program there at the school?
Yeah, it definitely does. We've got access to agricultural subjects right from year 10 and as well as a teen ag club available for all year groups.
So, Mac, tell us, this is the very prestigious event, the FMG Junior Young Farmer of the Year, as it is now known, formerly Teen Ag. What sort of challenges did yourself and Jack have to do for the competition leading into taking up that title?
So we had a farmlet. We started off with a farmlet on Saturday. That went well, and then we had an innovation project. So that was basically a business plan to take to the bank and present it forward. We thought we'd do that on the sheep milking, which you've seen you talking about earlier, then like an abattoir and that kind of thing, the niche market, the value add. And then on the Friday, we had to write a speech and through the modules like the MPI and the WorkSafe and the final quiz. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Great to Peter Gatley will be stoked to hear you doing that about sheep milking. Now, Jack, do you believe that, young men, gentlemen of your sort of age group appreciate sort of the level of technology and advancements within the sector and careers that are available?
Yeah, I definitely think we do. Our generation kind of is been experienced to and open to so much technology that I think we really fully understand how much of an impact it's having on our generation. And so going forward for farming, yeah, we definitely can see that it's going to have a huge impact.
Matt, you're saying you're over there on the West Coast. What sort of changes have you seen in your rural community, your farming families around you over there? And does it sort of excite you or worry you about, the future of places like the West Coast?
Well, we've seen the dairy factory just recently being sold offshores. That's obviously been quite a controversial one, I guess, in some people's minds, but I guess the farmers have had a nice payout from it, and yeah, it's going all right at the moment and holding itself. But yeah.
And what about your contributions going forward into the sector, Matt? What are you thinking of doing after school?
I was hoping to do a vet degree up in Massey. Hopefully, I can get in. But yeah, so that's where I think I'm heading. So.
Fantastic. It's obviously a very challenging one, but you've got a bright future ahead. Now, the Young Farmer of the Year organisation, how supportive were they, especially creating a competition off the back of COVID? Jack, that would have been very challenging, but they pulled it off and pulled it all together.
Yeah, the competition was actually run super smooth. I know there was a lot of work going on behind the scenes to have it operate so smoothly from what they'd already planned out to be a physical kind of all one-day event. So for us personally, we found that the competition was run super well, and yeah, we really enjoyed it.
Mac, what about some sweet prizes?
Yeah, good cream. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I think we got the Lincoln and the Massey vouchers and the FMG, so it's all pretty cool to go with it. So yeah, we're stoked.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, congratulations on behalf of everybody listening and watching To Sarah's Country to both of you. You're both very inspiring young men there at St Bede's College in Christchurch, have just taken out the FMG Junior Young Farmer of the Year. We will watch in anticipation if you continue your career. Do you think you'd both like to go through to the grand final of the official Young Farmer of the Year one day?
Yeah, I would love to have a shot at doing that competition as well. We've tested ourselves at this level, and so hopefully we can go one step further with Young Farmer of the Year.
And yourself, Mac?
Yeah, definitely would like to have a crack at that one day, and like Jack said, I think he summed it up pretty well. Just test ourselves at the next level and yeah, see where it goes.
Congratulations, gentlemen. That's Mac Williams and Jack Coakley from St Bede's College. As I said, they're the FMG 2020 Junior Young Farmer of the Year. Now, that's all we've got time for tonight on Sarah's Country. Thank you so much for kindly welcoming myself and Joel back after a week off. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. If you're living under a rock, we actually have an election in a matter of months, as with the interview from Shane Jones. He certainly is aware of it. All the campaigning is well underway. Sarah's Country, as you know, or don't know, is available on podcast on demand. The full shows as well as these individual interviews. And if you're really enjoying Sarah's Country, please share with your friends and family and let them know Monday through Thursday live from 7 o'clock across Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. We are everywhere across the web. Otherwise, go to farmersweekly.co.nz and click on the Sarah's Country tab. You'll find all of the information. And if you want to connect with us, send me an email, sarah@periummedia.com. It's wonderful to be back, and I can't wait to do this all again tomorrow. So good night and go well, and keep warm wherever you are around this beautiful paradise we call New Zealand.
This is Sarah's Country.